All right, the new guy is learning. All right, thank you, Chairwoman, for
You're doing great.
Thank you for bringing this egregious and evil issue to my attention. I don't think anyone in my district or our country would approve. I want to thank you for our witnesses for coming in. As a veteran, as a Navy SEAL, we use dogs, and they save many lives. We call them furry missiles. And my wife and I have a great Pyrenees, and our dog is part of the family. And I was not aware of what you've brought to our attention. And after listening to what the Chairwoman talked about this being a bipartisan issue, it should be. It's definitely evidence that evil does exist. And we spend more in our country per day than we bring in per day, which is going to sink this country if you don't get under control. I cannot believe the amount of money that we are spending to do these crazy things. I want to start with Dr. Locke. Approximately how many drugs are on the market today rely on safety and efficacy data from multiple animal models before being allowed to move to human clinical trials?
Thank you for your question. I don't have a good figure for you other than to say that, as you correctly stated, the law requires safety and efficacy, and before the FDA Modernization Act was passed, and probably even after it was passed, most of those drugs almost certainly had to go through some sort of animal testing. But I can't put a number on it, I'm sorry.
No worries. I strongly advocate for the welfare of animals. Dr. Locke, would you agree that eliminating animal testing entirely from the research and development of drugs and vaccine could significantly hinder our ability to assess safety and efficacy, potentially delaying life-saving treatments?
At the present time, we would need to transition away from animals. Yes, I do agree with that statement.
That's what I think. All right, Dr. Locke, given your knowledge in alternative testing models, can you briefly list and describe different examples of technological alternatives?
Yes, thank you for your question. One of the ones I mentioned in my testimony are these things called organs on a chip, which are just like what they sound like. They're small engineered devices, and they mimic the organs that we have in our body. So there's a lung on a chip, there's a heart on a chip, there's a liver on a chip, and those don't have exactly the same every of the same functions that our organs do, but they have enough so that you can make good decisions based on the biology that you learn from those. In many cases, you can actually put human cells in there. You're putting human cells in there to study chemicals. And you can also begin to link these together to get a whole body on a chip. Another area where we've had a lot of advances in developing these things called organoids. So organoids are groups of cells from, let's say, a brain or a liver or a heart, and you put them in a dish and they actually organize themselves into something that looks like a human organ, but it's not exactly the same. But again, it has enough function so you can study it and you can expose it to chemicals and you can expose it to other things so that you might know what it is going to impact it. The important thing to remember about these two is that in terms of cost effectiveness, you can put these in a well plate and you can do many, many studies at the same time. Unlike with animals where you have a very, very slow throughput, these you have either a medium or a high throughput. So those are two examples that I'm most familiar with. Our other witnesses have mentioned AI, computational models. That's another very, very powerful one. But we have all these unbelievable techniques now where we can actually use these for personalized medicine. So I think everyone here has a medical school in their district or a university in their district that does this. But for example, if I was suffering from a disease and there were two options for treatment for that disease, and one was, let's say, a chemical and the other was a radiation treatment, you could actually take cells from my body and you could regress those cells to stem cells, then make them organ cells.
I apologize. I'm running out of time. I have another question. I wish I had a list of the egregious things that my colleague Lauren Boebert listed. I couldn't believe half of or any of them. But I heard them mention kitten cannibalism, which is unbelievable. Is that true? And if so, where did it happen? When did it happen? What did they think they were going to achieve?
I don't have any information on that question. I'm sorry.
Does any of the witnesses have?
Yeah, my organization exposed that in 2018. The USDA's Agricultural Research Service, ARS, in Beltsville had a lab where they were breeding hundreds of kittens every year and doing feeding experiments with them, including going to wet markets in China and Brazil and other places, buying dog and cat meat, bringing it back to the United States and force feeding that meat to kittens for studies looking at the prevalence of toxoplasmosis in dog and cat meat in wet markets abroad.
Proof that evil does exist. Thank you, Chairwoman, for bringing this to our attention, and hopefully we can stop this evil. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGuire. I would now like to yield to the ranking member.